Have you ever looked back at a fantasy movie from the 1980s and wondered how on earth it ever got made? That decade carried a special energy. It mixed big imagination, practical creatures, bold costumes, and story ideas that felt pulled straight from wild daydreams. And right in the middle of all that magic, filmmakers created worlds you simply would not see funded today. Some were strange, some were heartfelt, and some were joyfully unpredictable. And trust me, a few coming up might surprise you more than you expect. Number 16, The Barbarians, 1987. There are films that whisper fantasy, and then there are films that shout it with full confidence. The Barbarians belongs firmly in the second group. Imagine a movie that feels like it was born from a sketchbook filled with towering heroes, colorful villains, oversized creatures, and an attitude that never second-guesses itself. That is exactly what this tape delivered to living rooms across the 1980s. Starring twin brothers who became instant icons of that era's muscle fantasy craze, the film follows two captured siblings who grow into unstoppable fighters determined to reclaim a stolen kingdom. What makes The Barbarians so memorable is not a serious tone or deep lore. It is the pure enthusiasm. The film leans into bright costumes, whimsical sets, unusual creatures, and a sense of comic adventure that borders on cheerful exaggeration. Many scenes looked like they were filmed right inside a themed stage show, and that charm is what kept it circulating on late-night television for years. Behind the scenes, the film was shot in Europe using large outdoor sets built specifically to capture an old-world atmosphere. Despite its modest budget, it brought an unmistakable personality that modern productions rarely attempt. The Barbarians stands today as a reminder that fantasy can be loud, colorful, and completely unafraid of being fun. Number 15, The Sword and the Sorcerer, 1982. Every fantasy fan from the home video era remembers one thing first about The Sword and the Sorcerer, the three-bladed sword. The moment that prop appeared on screen, it became instantly legendary among viewers who rented this film again and again during the early 1980s. But there was far more beneath the surface than a memorable piece of gear. This film drops you straight into a kingdom under siege by a powerful sorcerer, a missing prince, and a mysterious adventurer named Talon who steps into the conflict with more confidence than caution. The storytelling blends classic medieval themes with a playful tone that keeps the movie entertaining from the first scene to the last. The production was ambitious. Sets were hand-built, large groups of performers filled the background, and practical makeup gave the world a grounded but dreamlike feel. Even with its bold moments and theatrical energy, the movie never forgets to have fun. That is what made it a favorite among viewers who discovered it through video rental shelves. Interestingly, The Sword and the Sorcerer performed well at the box office, enough to influence later fantasy films throughout the decade. Yet its exaggerated style and fearless creativity place it firmly in a category studios would hesitate to revisit today. It remains a treasure from a time when fantasy filmmaking embraced wild ideas without hesitation. Number 14. Yor, The Hunter from the Future, 1983. Yor is not just a movie. Yor is an experience. If you walked into it expecting a simple prehistoric adventure, you quickly realized you were in for something far stranger. This film combines wide deserts, ancient tribes, futuristic elements, unusual creatures, and a hero who seems ready for anything the world throws at him. It is the kind of genre-mixing story that only the 1980s dared to attempt. Reb Brown stars as Yor, a wandering fighter trying to discover the truth behind his mysterious origins. Along the way, he encounters friendly tribes, dangerous creatures, and landscapes that shift dramatically from one scene to the next. Viewers often describe the film as a joyful collection of unexpected turns. You never quite know what will appear next, and that unpredictability is what made Yor such a favorite among tape collectors. Behind the scenes, the film was shot in several striking locations, including Turkey's scenic valleys and rugged terrain. The production team built a surprising number of practical sets and props to support the story's sudden leaps from ancient worlds to futuristic environments. Though critics were unsure what to make of it, audiences embraced Yor as a pure adventure. Its mix of charm, creativity, and fearless imagination make it a true example of something studios would hesitate to attempt today. Yor may be unusual, but that is exactly why it endures. Number 13. The Beastmaster, 1982. Few fantasy films from the era blended heart, adventure, and unusual world-building quite like The Beastmaster. The story follows Dare, a young man gifted with a rare bond that lets him understand and communicate with animals. This connection becomes his greatest strength as he uncovers the truth about his origins and forms a loyal group of creature companions who guide him through every challenge. For many young viewers, this idea alone sparked endless imagination, but the execution is what transformed Beastmaster into a home video legend. The film's identity stands out from the start. Wide desert views, handmade costumes, and practical creature effects gave the world a sense of texture rarely seen today. Dar's companions, especially an eagle and two clever ferrets, became instant fan favorites, adding warmth and personality to every moment of danger. Shot mainly in California and Mexico, the production leaned on natural landscapes to create believable fantasy surroundings. Mark Singer performed many physical scenes himself, giving Dar a convincing presence that audiences appreciated. Beastmaster was not a huge theatrical success, but its true life began on television and VHS. It aired so frequently that it became part of weekend tradition. The film proved that fantasy can be emotional, daring, and full of personality without losing its sense of wonder. Number 12. Krull, 1983. If you browsed the fantasy aisle of any 1980s video store, Krull jumped out immediately. The cover displayed the glaive, a spinning star-shaped artifact that became one of the decade's most iconic fantasy images. But Krull is far more than a memorable prop. It is an ambitious blend of medieval adventure and cosmic ideas that still feels completely unique. The story follows Prince Colwyn on a quest to rescue Princess Lissa from a powerful force known as the Beast. His journey moves through enchanted forests, rocky mountains, and mysterious caverns, joined by companions who bring humor, charm, and courage to the quest. For its time, the scale was remarkable. The film used massive sets, rich costumes, and practical effects that made the world feel real and lived in. A sweeping musical score adds even more personality, making every scene feel grand and emotional. Although Krull struggled at the box office, it found lasting life through VHS and television reruns. Fans admired its sincerity, imagination, and willingness to try ideas no other film attempted. Krull remains a bold cinematic gamble, a fantasy epic that embraced creativity over caution. Anyone who discovered it during the VHS era remembers its magic. Number 11. Hawk the Slayer, 1980. Hawk the Slayer is a film that proudly leans into its own mythic personality. It does not whisper fantasy. It shouts it with confidence. This adventure feels like the pages of a tabletop story coming to life, complete with a glowing sword, a mysterious orb, and a team of companions who each bring their own special skill to the journey. The story follows Hawk, a noble fighter wielding a blade with unusual power. His mission is personal, to stop his ruthless brother Voltan, played by Jack Palance with unforgettable intensity. Anyone who watched this in childhood remembers the way Palance delivered every line like it echoed across mountains. Filmed around the English countryside, the movie used practical effects, wide outdoor landscapes, and handcrafted props to create its distinct charm. Even with a modest budget, it carried enormous heart. That sincerity is what drew young viewers into the adventure and kept them recommending it to friends. Over the years, Hawk the Slayer grew from a small release into a beloved cult classic. Fans celebrate it not for perfection, but for imagination. It is a joyful reminder of a time when fantasy filmmaking embraced earnest storytelling and bold ideas. Number 10. Legend, 1985. Legend remains one of the most visually stunning fantasy films ever created. Directed by Ridley Scott, it unfolds in a dreamlike world where forests shimmer with drifting light, creatures lurk in hidden groves, and every frame looks painted by hand. The story centers on Lily, a curious young woman, and Jack, portrayed by a young Tom Cruise, who must bring back harmony after darkness spreads across the land. The film's atmosphere is its greatest strength. The enormous forest sets were built indoors, allowing the crew to control every detail. This produced magical lighting effects, floating particles, and surreal landscapes that feel timeless. Practical makeup work created unforgettable characters, including forest dwellers, enchanted beings, and the towering figure of darkness, still considered one of the most striking fantasy designs ever filmed. The soundtrack added even more depth. International audiences heard Jerry Goldsmith's soaring orchestral score, while United States viewers received a modern electronic version by Tangerine Dream. Both versions shaped the film's identity in different ways. Legend struggled in theaters but found a second life on home video. Today, it stands as a rare fantasy film that prioritizes mood and artistry over fast pacing. Its imagination continues to inspire viewers. Number 9. The NeverEnding Story II, The Next Chapter, 1990. Although released at the beginning of a new decade, The NeverEnding Story II carries the unmistakable spirit of 1980s fantasy. It follows Bastian as he returns to Fantasia, this time facing challenges that test his confidence, identity, and understanding of responsibility. The story feels more introspective, giving young viewers a journey that mirrors the struggle of growing up. The film introduces new locations, including the city of old emperors, and memorable characters such as Zaid, whose calm yet mysterious presence adds tension to the adventure. The sets and practical creature designs stay true to the handcrafted feel of the original, giving the world texture and warmth that digital effects often miss. Though reviews were mixed, many young viewers connected with Bastian's personal growth. His choices have consequences, and the film explores how courage often comes from understanding one's strengths rather than proving them. Production focused heavily on puppetry, mechanical creatures, and atmospheric lighting, creating a physical world that feels tangible from start to finish. While not as groundbreaking as the first film, The NeverEnding Story II still offers sincerity, imagination, and heartfelt adventure. It serves as a reminder that stories evolve with their heroes, and imagination remains constant no matter how much we grow. Number 8. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, 1988. If there was ever a film that embraced creativity without restraint, it is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Directed by Terry Gilliam, this movie feels like an illustrated storybook that suddenly sprang to life. Every scene bursts with color, exaggerated characters, and grand ideas that defy normal storytelling rules. The film follows the legendary Baron as he recounts his unbelievable adventures, taking viewers on a journey filled with moon voyages, daring rescues, and encounters with larger-than-life personalities. Production on this movie became almost as famous as the film itself. The sets were enormous, the costumes were extravagant, and the special effects blended practical craftsmanship with imaginative design. Many of the sequences were so ambitious that the production schedule stretched far longer than expected, making the movie a massive undertaking. But what truly stands out is the charm. The Baron is a character who refuses to accept limits. He believes life is meant to be extraordinary, and his tales reflect that philosophy. Gilliam's storytelling mirrors this belief, giving the audience a film that feels like stepping into a dream filled with surprises. Although it struggled commercially, Baron Munchausen became a beloved cult favorite. Its inventiveness appeals to viewers who appreciate films that dare to go beyond the familiar. Today, with modern production driven by careful planning and predictable formulas, a film this free-spirited feels nearly impossible to imagine. It remains a glowing example of pure artistic expression. Number 7. Red Sonja, 1985. Red Sonja brought a bold, adventurous spirit to the fantasy screen, introducing viewers to a powerful heroine on a quest for justice, loyalty, and inner strength. Brigitte Nielsen stars as Sonja, a skilled warrior determined to stop a dangerous artifact from falling into the wrong hands. Along the way, she forms unlikely alliances, including one with a wandering fighter portrayed by Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose presence added energy and charisma that fans still remember fondly. The film's world is filled with sweeping landscapes, stone temples, ancient fortresses, and characters whose costumes looked like they stepped straight out of illustrated fantasy novels. The movie leans heavily into classic storytelling themes like courage, resilience, and the ability to rise above hardship. Young viewers of the 1980s admired Sonja's determination, and many still recall her as one of the decade's standout fantasy figures. Behind the scenes, the production filmed in Italy using large outdoor sets that gave the movie a vivid old-world appearance. The score by Ennio Morricone added dramatic flair, weaving heroism and mystery together through powerful orchestration. While Red Sonja did not achieve major success during its theatrical release, its home video life made it an essential part of the fantasy collection for many fans. It holds an important place as one of the earliest big-screen adventures led by a fierce, independent heroine. In an era where fantasy was dominated by male characters, Sonja's presence felt fresh, inspiring, and memorable. Number 6. The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, celebrated in the 1980s through TV and home video. Even though The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad originally premiered decades earlier, the 1980s turned it into a fantasy staple. It became a constant presence on weekend television, classroom projectors, and well-worn rental tapes. For many young viewers of that era, this was their first introduction to towering creatures, enchanted islands, and classic adventure storytelling. And at the heart of it all was Ray Harryhausen's legendary stop-motion artistry, which gave life to cyclops, dragons, skeletons, and impossible wonders. The story follows Sinbad the sailor as he embarks on a journey to save a princess who has been placed under a magical spell. Along the way, he faces trials that blend myth, danger, and clever problem-solving. The film's pacing and energy feel surprisingly modern, which is why kids discovering it in the 1980s embraced it with enthusiasm. What made this film so iconic during that decade was its accessibility. It did not rely on intense imagery or complicated lore. It offered something universal, handwritten fantasy brought to life with real craftsmanship. The creatures felt tangible because they were made by human hands, moved frame by frame with patience that shines through every scene. Even though effects have changed dramatically since then, the legacy of Sinbad's journey remains untouchable. It stands as a reminder that imagination does not need perfection. It needs heart, creativity, and a world willing to believe in the extraordinary. Number 5. The Dungeonmaster, 1984. If you ever walked into a video store during the 1980s and wanted something unpredictable, the Dungeonmaster was the kind of tape that practically jumped off the shelf. It delivered an anthology-style adventure, unlike anything else, blending fantasy, science themes, surreal environments, and a hero guided by a talking computer companion. Yes, that was the 1980s, bold enough to mix magic and early digital imagination without thinking twice. The movie follows Paul, a skilled programmer who is challenged by a powerful figure known as Mistema. To win his freedom, Paul must face a series of trials, each created by a different director. This structure turned the film into a visual sampler of the decade's creative energy. Every sequence looked and felt completely different, giving young viewers the sense that they were flipping through a fever dream of fantasy settings. But the real charm is the variety. One moment you're in a frozen wasteland, the next in a futuristic arena, and then in a strange realm full of illusions. These transitions feel sudden, wild, and completely fitting for a time when filmmakers treated storytelling as a playground. The Dungeonmaster became a cult favorite because of its willingness to take risks. It did not follow rules, it created new ones. And while modern films rely heavily on polished effects, this one thrives on pure creativity. It represents a decade unafraid to experiment, pushing fantasy into unpredictable territory. Number 4. Fire and Ice, 1983. Fire and Ice stands as one of the most visually striking animated films ever made, created through a technique known as rotoscoping. Artists filmed real performers acting out scenes, then drew over each frame to achieve a fluid, dreamlike look that blends realism with fantasy illustration. The result is a movie that feels like a living painting, influenced heavily by legendary fantasy artist Frank Frazetta. His bold style shaped every mountain, fortress, and character expression you see on screen. The film follows Princess Tigra and the young warrior Larn as they attempt to stop a creeping force of ice that threatens their homeland. Their journey takes them across fire-lit jungles, icy cliffs, and ancient ruins that feel pulled straight from a fantasy art book. The story may be simple, but the visual world is unforgettable. Every frame pulses with color and motion, proving that animation can be just as powerful as live action when handled with passion. Fire and Ice did not find enormous success theatrically, but it earned a dedicated following through tape rentals and late-night broadcasts. Many fantasy fans discovered it unexpectedly, drawn in by its glowing artwork and unusual tone. Today, the film holds a special place because its technique is rarely used in modern productions. It took dedication, patience, and a deep love of fantasy illustration. Fire and Ice remains a beautiful reminder of a time when animation embraced bold imagery without hesitation. Number 3. The Black Cauldron, 1985. The Black Cauldron holds a unique place in animation history. Made by Disney during a period of creative transition, it dared to explore darker tones, mysterious magic, and sweeping adventure in a way that surprised viewers who expected lighter stories. For young audiences of the 1980s, this film felt different. It carried a sense of danger, wrapped in a fairy tale structure, offering a journey through misty forests, ancient legends, and characters who struggled with courage in the face of overwhelming uncertainty. The story follows Taran, an assistant pig keeper who dreams of becoming a hero. When he discovers that an ancient cauldron holds the power to bring unstoppable harm if misused, he joins a small group of allies to prevent disaster. The world he travels through is rich with creatures, illusions, and atmospheric landscapes that still stand out today for their artistic depth. The animation was groundbreaking for its time. Disney experimented with early computer imagery, new lighting effects, and a larger visual scale than earlier films. This ambition gave the movie a rare blend of classic craftsmanship and experimental innovation. Though the Black Cauldron struggled at the box office, its home video release transformed it into a cult favorite among fantasy lovers. Its willingness to challenge expectations is exactly what makes it unforgettable. Today, it stands as a reminder that animated films can be bold, moody, and full of dramatic stakes. Number 2. The Company of Wolves, 1984. The Company of Wolves is a haunting and dreamlike fantasy that blends folklore with surreal imagery in a way only the 1980s dared to attempt. Directed by Neil Jordan, the film presents a series of interconnected tales that revolve around a young girl named Rosaline and the lessons she learns about trust, caution, and the world beyond the safety of her home. But this is not a straightforward fairy tale. It unfolds like a series of vivid dreams, shifting effortlessly between reality and imagination. The film's most striking strength is its atmosphere. Fog-drenched forests, old cottages, and moonlit paths create a visual world that feels both inviting and unsettling. Each segment introduces characters who seem familiar yet mysterious, and the transformations that occur throughout the film are presented with practical effects that feel intentionally artistic rather than frightening. The production embraced detailed set design and handcrafted props to build a world that feels timeless. The storytelling is layered, thoughtful, and filled with symbolism, which is why it resonated deeply with older teens and adults discovering it on home video. Though it never reached mainstream popularity, The Company of Wolves has earned lasting respect for its creativity. Modern studios rarely explore fantasy with such poetic bravery. This film stands as a testament to a time when filmmakers were willing to experiment with tone and structure, letting the audience interpret the story rather than guiding them too neatly. Number 1. Sorceress, 1982. Sorceress represents everything wild and unrestrained about early 1980s fantasy filmmaking. Produced by the ever-bold Roger Corman, this film tells the story of two siblings raised in a mystical land filled with enchanted forests, ancient lore, and magical creatures. Their journey pulls them into a struggle for harmony against dark forces, leading them through a world shaped by spells, illusions, and mythical beings. What makes Sorceress unforgettable is its enthusiastic commitment to imagination. Every scene aims to surprise. You get glowing landscapes, unusual transformations, and large practical creature designs that look like they were built with incredible care despite the film's limited budget. This mix of ambition and creativity is exactly what fans of the era still love. The movie was filmed primarily in Mexico, using wide outdoor spaces and handcrafted sets to create a sense of scale. The bright locations gave the film a warm, earthy look that contrasted beautifully with its magical elements. Performers embraced the adventurous spirit, delivering expressive, larger-than-life characters that fit perfectly into the fantasy universe. Sorceress may not have been a major theatrical success, but it became a constant presence in home video collections. Viewers who discovered it on late-night TV or rental shelves remember its unusual charm. It stands proudly as a film that could only have been made during that fearless window of fantasy history, where imagination ruled above all else. What a decade! The 1980s gave us fantasy that felt fearless, handmade, and bursting with personality. Some films dazzled us, some puzzled us, and some became the tapes we rewound more times than we can count. Now I want to hear from you. Which one of these wild adventures shaped your childhood imagination? Drop your memories below, hit subscribe for more deep dives, and let's keep exploring the worlds that shaped us.